For the first time in modern history, the leaders of China, Russia, and North Korea are standing together in Beijing, not simply as head of state, but as symbols of a shifting world order. Xi Jinping's decision to host Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un in China is more than ceremonial pageantry. It is a calculated projection of solidarity among regimes that share a desire to counterbalance the United States' power and redefine global growth. Their gathering raises urgent questions. Is this the birth of a new axis in global politics or a fragile alignment of convenience? Could closer military and economic cooperation among the three reshape security dynamics from Europe's battlefields to the Pacific? And what does their assure of unity mean for an international system already strained by war, sanctions, and fraying alliances? Well, as we delve into the details, these and many more will be explored in today's Flash News. Good afternoon and welcome. I am Tabitha Arkor. Let's begin. China's President Xi Jinping is hosting Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Beijing, a rare display of solidarity among leaders whose policies have challenged the Western-led global order. Let's take a listen.
From May 9 to September 3, we mutually take part in each other's celebrations commemorating the victory in the world anti-fascist war. This has already become a good tradition of our bilateral relations, and it convincingly demonstrates the great responsibility of China and Russia as the main victorious countries in the Second World War, and as permanent members of the UN Security Council, and shows the firm determination of our two countries to defend the results of the Second World War and its historical truth. China-Russia relations have withstood the tests of the international environment.
We take a look at the broader China and Russia relations in this report. Now we see that the visit comes as Putin and Kim attend a massive military parade in China, underscoring Xi's ability to bring together regimes that have increasingly positioned themselves against US and European influence. The appearance marks the first time the three leaders have stood together publicly, a symbolic milestone that could reshape the security landscape in the Asia-Pacific. Now we see that this gathering follows recent defense pacts between Russia and North Korea and a deepening alignment between Beijing and Pyongyang. Could this trilateral bloc evolve into a structured military partnership capable of shifting the balance of power in the Pacific? Kim arrived in Beijing aboard his armored train, while Putin and Xi engaged in talks with Mongolia's leader on the pipeline project and broader bilateral ties. Russia has already benefited from China's support in trade and energy since Western sanctions over the Ukraine war, while Pyongyang has reportedly deployed more than 15,000 troops to aid Russia on the battlefield. We see that Xi's summit with over 20 non-Western leaders earlier this week included calls to resist hegemonism and power politics, a veiled rebuke of Washington. Meanwhile, Xi also mended ties with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, even as the United States tightened trade pressure on New Delhi over Russian oil imports. It's Beijing's outreach to both rivals and partners, part of a broader strategy to build a new multipolar order under its influence. The world leaders, Western officials have warned that trilateral military exercises between Russia, China, and North Korea are now increasingly likely. Such maneuvers would mark a historic reversal just a few years ago. Beijing and Moscow were key players in sanctioning Pyongyang over its nuclear program. What changed so dramatically? And how might this new alignment complicate Western security calculations? South Korea's intelligence agency estimates that 600 North Korean troops have already died in Ukraine's Kursk region and warns of further deployment, if confirmed. Thus, this level of engagement risks drawing Asia more directly into Europe's war. We see that Putin, addressing the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Tianjin, reiterated the need to restore a fair balance in global security. He also criticized NATO's eastward expansion. His presence in Beijing alongside Xi and Kim may provide clues to how Moscow intends to recalibrate its partnerships as the war in Ukraine grinds on. The Beijing summit highlights how quickly shifting alliances are reshaping global geopolitics, whether it evolves into a strategic counterweight to the West or remains a symbolic show of strength remains an open question. Well, this is what we see at the SCO summit in China. And just imagine having Kim together with Xi Jinping and Putin. That's a heavy alliance right there. But they're trying to counter the European powers or the United States powers, as we would think. But then let's move over to the Middle East. Hundreds gathered in Sana'a on Monday to mourn senior Houthi officials, including Prime Minister Ahmed al-Rahawi, killed an Israeli airstrike last week. He was killed in an Israeli airstrike last week. The mass funeral, marked by chants against Israel and the United States, coincided with a new missile strike on an oil tanker in the Red Sea, signaling a dangerous escalation in the conflict. The funeral procession held at the Sharp Mosque honored al-Rahawi and several ministers of foreign affairs, media and culture and industry. Their deaths mark the highest level losses that they've seen in recent times. We see that Houthis have suffered since Israel and the United States intensified strikes on the Iranian-backed group. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared that the strikes were just the beginning, warning, "We are doing what no one has done before us. This is only the beginning of the strikes on senior officials in Sana'a. We will get to all of them." That is right there on your screen. We see that the August 24th airstrike reportedly targeted a government meeting, leaving several other officials wounded. Its timing followed the Houthis' announcement that they had fired a ballistic missile with a cluster warhead toward Israel, an escalation not seen since 2023. On the day of the funeral, the Houthis claimed responsibility for a new missile attack on a Saudi-linked oil tanker in the Red Sea. The move threatens to reignite their campaign against global shipping in one of the world's busiest maritime routes, a tactic they had slowed in recent months. Let's take a listen.
The naval force of Yemeni armed forces carried out a military operation targeting the Israeli oil tanker Scarlet Ray in the northern Red Sea using a ballistic missile. The operation resulted in a direct hit on the ship. Thank God.
The simultaneous funeral and military strike underscores the Houthis' intent to respond to leadership losses with renewed aggression, raising concerns of a deeper regional confrontation. Now, that's it for the Middle East. Now, taking it over to the breaking reports we got from the home front, disheartening one, we would say gunmen allegedly backed by the French Cameroon government, posing as Amazonian fighters, have once again unleashed violence in Bamenda. The latest attack occurred in the Nkwen area where armed men stormed the Center Bold neighborhood, firing indiscriminately into homes and streets. Residents reported that the assault left a teenage girl dead and two others critically injured. The victim, identified as the daughter of Mr. Asafo Kingsley, was caught in the gunfire and killed instantly. The injured, whose identities remain undisclosed at press time, were rushed to a nearby hospital where they are battling for their lives. Eyewitnesses described scenes of chaos as families fled for safety while bullets tore through the neighborhood. Local sources insist that the attackers are not genuine Ambazonian fighters, but rather government-sponsored militias deployed to create fear, confusion, and to discredit the separatist movement in the northwest region. Now, this is not the first time such attacks have occurred. Human rights groups and local observers have long accused the French Cameroon government of covertly supporting armed groups that impersonate separatist fighters. The strategy, they argue, is aimed at justifying heavy military crackdowns while eroding community trust in the Ambazonian cause. We see that the center board incident adds to the growing insecurity in Bamenda, a city already traumatized by years of conflicts between separatist fighters seeking independence for Ambazonia and government forces determined to maintain control. Families now live in constant fear, with sporadic shootings, arbitrary arrests, and killings becoming grim realities of daily life. The latest attack raises pressing questions. Who truly controls security in Bamenda? And how long can civilians remain caught in the crossfire of a conflict fueled by propaganda, impunity, and geopolitical arrest? Now, that's all for the home front, taking you over to Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, there's a disastrous situation right there. Rescue efforts are underway in eastern Afghanistan after a powerful 6.0 magnitude earthquake struck late Sunday, killing at least 800 people and injuring more than 2,500, according to the Taliban government. The quake, centered 27 kilometers east of Jalalabad in Kunar province, hit at 11:47 p.m. local time at a shallow depth of just 8 kilometers. Shallow quakes typically cause greater destruction and several aftershocks follow. Images released by the Public Health Ministry showed funeral prayers, the injured being carried on stretchers, and residents digging frantically through rubble in search of missing relatives. Let's take a look. The destruction is weighty. Taliban spokesman Zabihullah Mujahid said most casualties were reported in Kunar province, where entire villages were devastated. Many Afghan homes, particularly in rural areas, are constructed with mud bricks and wood, leaving them highly vulnerable to collapse during earthquakes. The disaster adds to Afghanistan's ongoing humanitarian struggles, where fragile infrastructure and limited emergency response capacity heighten the scale of tragedy after natural disasters. Now, that's all for Afghanistan, taking you over to Africa in Sudan. Now, apart from the wars in Sudan, we get to see that there are a lot of natural disasters happening right there. At least 1,000 people were killed when a landslide struck a village in Sudan's Mara Mountains on August 31st, following days of heavy rainfall. The Sudan Liberation Movement, which controls the area, said only one person survived. Let's take a look. The movement, led by Abdul Wahid Mohammed Noor, reported that the entire village had been wiped out and appealed to the United Nations and humanitarian agencies for urgent support in recovering bodies and providing aid. Victims included men, women, and children. The tragedy comes as thousands of civilians fleeing clashes between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary rapid support forces in North Darfur had sought refuge in the Mara Mountains. Already facing shortages of food and medicine, survivors now confront an even deeper humanitarian emergency. Sudan's civil war, now in its second year, has displaced millions and left more than half the population at crisis levels of hunger. Fighting continues around Sudan. We see that the capital of North Sudan faces a lot of tragedy, a lot of situation. But then this whole issue has further compounded to the crisis we see in recent times. The landslide underscores how the ongoing conflict and fragile humanitarian situation leave communities increasingly vulnerable to natural disasters. With villages erased and lives lost, will the international community respond with the urgency required? Or will the victims of the force overlapping crisis remain forgotten? These are the issues and the current situations we are having in Darfur. As this story develops, we'll definitely bring you up to speed with the current happenings. Until next time, this is where we'll be drawing the curtain on today's Flash News. Remember, we'll be bringing you Untold Stories and Undaunted at the top of the hour, 8 p.m. Until then, do have a pleasant day and stay safe. I don't know who's on that teleprompter.